Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining. We are hosting another roundtable discussion. This one is very interesting, very much demanded from the community, really understanding how to say no. As an early career professional, you can imagine that saying no is something that might not come off really well, but we've have a panel here today that are going to be speaking about how to say no and the importance of saying no, especially when you're trying to balance work and life. So we are joined again by one of our guest moderators, Vadim Williams. Thanks, Vadim, for joining. My name is Kunal. I'm one of the community managers of Mentor Spaces, and I'll be passing it over to Vadim real briefly here, who will be leading the discussion, moderating the questions that we have. JaCynthia is going to be one of the panelists, and we're waiting for another panelist to join as well, who will be sharing their insights about this topic. As you all might have already known, we do host roundtable discussions every Tuesdays and Thursdays for this current period of time, all around getting perspectives from people who have been there and have had the experiences that you're looking for to gain perspective. So with that, I will go ahead and pass it over to Vaden. One thing to note is this is supposed to be an open conversation. So if you have any questions or comments to the questions that Vaden will share with the panelists, please feel free to raise your hand or type in the chat, and we'll go through your questions or comments as the discussion opens up. So with that, I'll pass it over to Vaden.
Thank you, Kunal. Hi, I'm Vadim Williams. I'm a full-time operations supervisor. I aspire to become a IPT project manager at Giant Foods. I'm finishing my degree at Capella University, where I do have a 4.0 GPA, and I'm also a full-time student at Capella University. So I have a lot on my table. I can also benefit from figuring out how to say no also at the same time from this conversation here. So I'm excited to moderate. On that note, I'm going to pass it over to JaCynthia and have her introduce herself.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm JaCynthia Little. I have been working with MSC Industrial Supply Company for the past 8 years in various roles. My current role with the company is a senior D&I and early career partner there. So I'm excited to be here and to share today.
Thank you, JaCynthia. Federico, I just saw you join. Can you introduce yourself to the audience here?
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you, everyone. My name is Federico Iglesias. I am head of product at Best Day Travel. Best Day is a Mexican online travel agency, and I am in charge of supply products teams.
Great. Thank you for introducing you guys. So I'm going to start off just digging in, and I'm going to start with the first question here. Can you recall a memorable time when it was tough to say no to your boss or client? What was at risk if you were doing so? How did you determine that no was the right response for you? And what resulted from you saying no in that instance? Was it positive, negative feedback, or even neutral response?
So can we just take a turn?
Yeah, for sure. JaCynthia, if you want to start off, that'd be great.
Sure, I'll start off, and then Federico can kind of jump in and maybe give his thoughts as well. But I recall, I guess maybe I would go with a boss or my manager, my immediate manager, had requested that I lead a project. And it's kind of tough to say no to your manager, but I also felt like I could maybe not necessarily add the value to the project at that particular time based upon all the other projects that I was currently working on. So, I had the experience, I think, as related to what project pertains. I felt like because of the commitment that I have already extended with other projects that I was working on, it just wasn't going to be realistic for me to do that particular project that they were requesting. for me to be able to provide the level of quality and value. So I said no, but I also in turn said that even though I couldn't lead the project, that I would be open to share my experiences in that capacity. So I didn't want to just flat out and just say no.
Right, right. So you met kind of halfway with that. So you said, I can't really put the full-time commitment into the project and have the outcome that you guys would expect with the time that I do have, but if my experience can come into play.
Yep, that's
That's
right.
great, great. Federico, how about you?
Yes, I could listen very well because there are something with the streaming, but I will try to tell you my experience regarding how to say no. In product management, is very common that stakeholders, customers, all kind of people inside of the company ask you and recommend you implement different issues, different features. And the most of time you need to tell them no. You need to practice that with empathy, and you need to reinforce your answer with data to explain why is not. I always remember that Steve Jobs said that the magic, in general, the magic of the thing is about the thing you let outside of the product. So in general, the most of times you need to say no, but you need to find the right way, the right path to say no with numbers, with data, maybe validating with hypotheses, and with empathy too.
Gotcha. So a lot of times we hear the saying, the cliche in business, that the customer's always right, right? So they can come up to you and say, hey, actually or the stakeholders, in your case, I guess, Federico, they can come up to you and say, hey, I want something different in a sense. And you're like, okay, I can't do that, but you validate it with data saying that, it will still be done. You'll still get the out process that you're looking for, the output that you're looking for, but I'm going to validate it with you with data in a sense.
Yeah, I remember another quote about Jay Bezos. He said a few years ago that is they want to ask to their customers about the Prime Video product. The customer never will say that we need to build a membership of our loyalties customers. So sometimes you need to understand the user needs, and with that build the product. But in general, the output is dangerous to try to solve the problem just with outputs. You need to think always in outputs, in outcomes. Sorry.
Right. That's interesting you said that. If we're up to Prime Video, I guess, beta users, everything will be free, and then the company would never make money in a sense. So that's actually interesting you said that. I'm going to move on to the second question here that I have lined up. When is it most difficult for you to say no at work? Are there particular situations that continue to come up that make you have to say no repetitively? JaCynthia, you want to start off with that one?
I would say that, when it's most difficult to say no is when, because of the fact that I have the opportunity to work on large corporate projects, it gives me that level of exposure with senior leadership to where they may tap me and want me to participate in other projects or jump on something. And I think that might be the most challenging for me, because just generally, genuinely and naturally, I'm honored that they would include me. So despite my workload, I may grapple over whether or not I want to tell them no, because it's a great way to learn and grow when you have individuals reach out to you for to join projects or what have you. But at the same time, it's better to say no in effort not to overextend yourself, because again, that kind of goes back to my thought earlier of, quality, and, you want to be able to produce a good output or product in your work. And by overextending yourself, oftentimes that's just not going to happen.
Right, right. I hear you. You gotta know what your capacity is and what your cap is in a sense, and then if you keep running into these issues, you have to work around it if you want to stay with the company in a sense. Federico, how do you feel about
Yes, another topic regarding that is the cultural thing through the company could be very different in Latin America than in Mexico, than in Argentina, or than France or United States. In some places, when you say no, maybe the people can take as a personal thing, and in another cultures you can find more more facility to understand what you are saying no. So in this global economy and even more in COVID context, when you are working remotely and you interact with different cultures, you need to take care about that. And again, if you explain with empathy, you explain with data, and you explain with reasonable approach, I don't think that the no will be something that hurts the feelings.
Gotcha. So it could be a cultural thing that might be a boundary, but then also at the same time, no matter where you're at, you have to be the ambassador for yourself at the end of the day. And you have to, in a sense, come back, like you said before, with data saying, this is why I can't do it. All right, so for the third question that we're going to move on to is, in your experience, what happens if people say no a little too often at work? What have you seen happens to that person or even the company at large?
So what in my personal experience, what I've seen is that it can oftentimes potentially give off the perception that the individual is either not engaged or maybe not interested in growing and learning from experiences. So, you do want to keep that in mind, especially if you're wanting to be called upon for future opportunities. So, it's important, just like what I was stating earlier, that even though I may have said no, I always look for an opportunity to kind of say, maybe this is the way that I can, participate if indeed I have the ability to do so, to provide that input, whether it's from experiences, etc., to be able to say, no, I can't join this for 6 months. But if you reach out to me for insight, then I'll be more than happy to share that in bullets or what have you, or maybe help you pull together a presentation. But I think it is important to have those boundaries, but at the same time, look for that flexibility as well.
Gotcha. So that kind of leans back towards your first answer that you gave earlier about leaning back on your experience. Federico, what about you?
Yes, I would like to say that it's not so important how many times you say no, the important is if you are saying no with the right things, because if this is irrational, the thing that are asking you is normal that you you will say no all the times, but the real thing, the core of this is if it's rational or not, the thing that they are asking to you. And obviously, if not, it's very common that you will say no every time.
Right. Right. So
You need to measure the value and the outcome of this question or this demand.
right. So you kind of have to do a cost benefit analysis and then weigh out, is it more worthy or is it not worthy to say no at times?
Yes.
Gotcha. Gotcha. All right. So kind of piggybacking off what you said about, setting boundaries, JaCynthia, in your experience, what results have, from having poor boundaries at work? So what is the outcome of having poor boundaries at work?
So, I believe that, it can blur the lines of what should be priority. It could negatively impact your productivity. The quality of the output could decrease, and it could lead to work fatigue. So most importantly, it's not just a matter of, what should I be doing first, but it could also be, okay, I am just so overwhelmed that I don't want to do anything at all. It's just, you just feel that sense of being buried alive, basically. So I think that it's important for us to have boundaries at work, to understand what those boundaries are. But sometimes, you can be encouraged. Again, it's that balance, because, some people say, okay, you have to step outside your comfort zone to grow. You want to look for ways to expand your boundaries, but at the same time, personally what that line is, and if you cross that line, then it could lead to the impacting your productivity. So just be thinking about that as you're prioritizing your work to better understand, okay, now is a good time for me to say no, because I don't want my work to be impacted. I don't want the level of my work to be impacted.
Gotcha. I think we're having technical issues there with Federico there. We just lost him, but just kind of in a sense, again, piggybacking off what you're saying, it could lead to either great unmotivation or great motivation. Because I know personally, there have been some times where I was like, I know I can't do this, but being young in the industry, trying to make a reputation for myself, I said yes. And there are times that I did overcome it, and I got greatly motivated by the fact that I did do something I felt was impossible. But on the other hand, I put myself at risk by possibly being unmotivated if I didn't do it, feeling unburdened, kind of in a sense, feeling like I'm no good here. I don't belong and all that. So I definitely relate to what you're saying. I'm going to just move on to the next one. Hopefully Federico can join us again. But looking back, can you recall a time when you said yes and later regretted it? And what got in the way or hindered you from saying no?
Um, I don't want to say that I necessarily regretted it. It just probably was more so a situation of what did I get myself into? I was feeling it a little bit. So I think it would be more so that. I do recall a time when I was asked to join a committee for about a year, and I graciously accepted, but a lot of things were happening and changes were happening within the organization, and my role was evolving into a new one. And I said, okay, well, being on the committee was rewarding, but it was also brutal to balance the required time with all the other things that I had going on. So I did not really say no, because leaders had recommended me for the opportunity, and I knew that I wanted to position myself for growth in my career. So I didn't turn it down. And I'm glad I didn't, because I was able to provide some valuable input and insight as it relates to the program and the committee that I was a part of. So I was glad to do it. But again, it was it did stretch me.
I understand. I definitely understand that. So you, in the end, maybe in the time you had doubts or feelings of regret, but at the end of the day, you didn't regret it.
Right, because I always, no matter what, I always look at an experience as a good experience, irregardless of how challenging or tough or the obstacles I face. I always look for the good in the experience, and it's something that you can say later, I did this. So, I was a part of this. So, yeah, I didn't look at it per se as a regret, but during the process, I was definitely like, this is a lot I'm taking on at this time. So,
I can understand. And then lastly, I guess to summarize everything, I want to ask, how do you respond to others who say no to you at work?
well, I've been in a unique position to where I'm an influencer, I would say, a change agent. So you, I don't just like if someone just says no, I'm like, okay, so you're saying no, but let's talk about it. Like, why exactly are you saying no? Is it something? Are you sure that we can't work something out? Maybe you just show up for this particular piece or what have you of the event and maybe not the whole thing. So I kind of go into maybe a little negotiation
Mhm.
around those that may say no. But and I also want to gauge the level of commitment that they could have, so okay, your bandwidth, you're saying your capacity, you don't have enough time, let's see what else alternative you can do. If they just say that they can't do it, I thank them for being honest up front, because the last thing you want is to invite them to be a part of something you're working on and they don't have the capacity and they're struggling and you're constantly having to pick up the pieces. And so, it's better for them to tell you up front that they can't do it. And I appreciate that. So, for anyone who is like, oh, I'm so concerned about whether or not whether it'll be received or how it would be received, at the end of the day, I think they'll be more appreciative if you say no, because you don't have the bandwidth to do it and you're not going to be able to provide that quality of work, than to get involved and you're not able to meet the demands and the commitment that's required of the ask. So just keep that in mind.
Right, right. I definitely understand that. I guess since Federico's not here, I can give experience on my end as an operations supervisor. So in my warehouse that I work at, we have about 120 associates, and obviously there's some jobs that are harder than others. And I started off supervising what is possibly the hardest department to supervise and the hardest job. It's very laborious, very physical. And I've had many people who said, no, I don't want to go to work in the middle of a shift. And there's no one to replace them in a sense, because we train them to handle the volume that we're seeing. We're training them to, in a sense, man this area until the end of the shift, till you're properly relieved by the next shift. And I've had people who just walked off and everything. And like you say, I have to empathize and sit with them and say, hey, we made you very important. And I've learned that, in a sense, when you make someone feel important and they see why they're the actual cog in that actual machine, it gives them a little bit of motivation to get up and say, okay, you know what, I can handle it. And you mentioned you've done it before, you've done this, you can handle it. Just put it in for me for a few more hours, and I promise you'll be okay. I keep an eye on them throughout the shift also, whatnot. And if they're, naturally we're all humans at the end of the day. If they're unmotivated, I'll go over there, work with them, show them that, we are a team here. And that gives them also sometimes some motivation to keep going on and eventually give a yes as to staying. So that's it. I've learned that's a great method to use also. I'm curious if maybe you've been in situations where you've had to, in a sense, motivate someone to stay because from a no initially.
Oh yeah. So there's been plenty of instances of that. And I think just my enthusiasm around a project or a process, especially if it comes to again communicating, that we're taking a different avenue or path, and you have to kind of like rally the troops. So you definitely have that motivating factor. I always think about myself and how I'm being perceived in the process. So I want to make sure that I'm approaching it positively, that, you know, my communication is positive and my interaction is positive. And them seeing my genuine interest in the project and my passion in the project oftentimes will help motivate them to want to step up and join me in the process of
Right.
because, you know, it's like, come on, no, 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 we're not gonna, okay, yes, we don't have, you know, this particular product or this particular thing that we need, but let's try and work through what we do have and what else we potentially could ask for to make sure we can get it done. So it definitely is a process, and you do want to make sure that you personally, again, remain positive in the interaction. So.
Right, yeah, and that takes a lot of I guess humility on your end also, because there can be times where you have to motivate someone when you, in a sense, as the management that's around, aren't motivated. So I could go home easily right now, but I
Right.
need you guys to keep pushing. I'm gonna kind of fake it till we make it and show you that I'm enthusiastic about it at the end of the day.
That's
So with
right.
that, I'm just gonna move on to the Q&A section. You want to take over for that?
Yeah, I haven't seen any questions come in, so we can wait for any questions that come in. If you have any questions, please raise your hand or type in the chat. While we wait, I can chime in here as well from my experiences as being a manager within a tech company. I think you guys both alluded to this, and when you do have to interact with people that may be burnt out or may have not had this don't have the same motivation that you do. The two things that I keep in mind is pace and space, and making sure that they have enough space to kind of uh, get through what they're getting through, what they have going on with their lives or their work. It's really important to make sure that that space is there for those individuals to think and process. And then we also like to make sure that we communicate the pace at which we expect things to progress if they after they need that space. So if there's something that needs to be done by a certain period of time, setting the expectation up, even if we're giving them a space, letting them know that you can say no for a little bit of time, but there's this expectation that we have for you to complete this this project, this task by a certain date. So let's continue to work at the pace that makes the most sense for you, but and given the space that we're trying to give you to make sure that everything is settled down for you across your things outside of work. But that usually kind of helps with the discussion that we tend to have with some of the folks on our team when it comes to there's times that people have to say no to things because they're trying to create a balance for themselves with their lives and the work.
Now you mentioned a great point because I want to say that when I was speaking as it relates to projects, so projects aren't necessarily my day-to-day job, right? These are added on to my main responsibilities. So I want to make sure that's clear. And I'm glad you brought that up because
Yeah.
I don't want to give a false perception out there that if it is a part of your role in day-to-day duties, that is not what you're saying no to. Because that is what's required and expected of you. So there's going to be expectations of things that you are to do. So I don't want anyone to approach a job and thinking that I can just go in here and say, no, I don't want to type up this note. Like, no, that is your job. That is what you're supposed to be doing. But if your manager comes to you and says, I have this special project or this thing that we're trying to pull together and we're forming a team. Do you want to participate on the team outside of what you normally do? And you say, well, I don't know if I have the capacity to do it. That's one thing. But I just want to make sure everybody is aligned with that because I don't want anybody saying, I was in this mentoring session and we could say no, and that's not necessarily what I was trying to convey. So.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you for clarifying that. Same as well. Yeah, projects are definitely a lot more intensive, and you have to identify if that's something that works within this, the day-to-day that you have within the company. But tasks that are associated with your role are things that you should be completing. If there are, you know, tasks that you don't agree with your manager, you can certainly bring that up, but it's important for you to do that well in advance of saying no to that task.
That's right.
Agreed.
All right, well, we're at time. Thank you all for joining. We do like to end these on time, so just one or two quick messages. We have another session on Thursday. We're really looking forward to the discussion around the topic. There'll be another set of mentors that will be joining, and we'll be really taking a look at how we can use mentor spaces more efficiently through the sessions that we have been hosting. And if you all want to join, it should be at Thursday at 2 p.m. So look for any for communication around the topic and the discussion that we'll have. And with that, if you have any other ideas or topics that you would like to have us discuss, feel free to share that within the concierge channel. We're looking for additional ideas for the month of May. And then final note is, if you wanted to connect with JaCynthia for a one-on-one, we are making our mentors available based off of their availability and their time commitment to connect with individuals one-on-one. So feel free to reach out to me and I'll facilitate the introduction. If there's an opportunity for us to make a relevant connection there. And thank you all for joining. I really appreciate you chiming in here. And thank you for your time, JaCynthia and Vadim.
Thank you, Kunal.
Glad to participate. Take care, everyone.
Take care, JaCynthia. Thank you.